My family treated me like a ghost for a decade. When they finally needed me, I said 3 words that destroyed them. I was 20 when my younger brother Ethan killed himself. I was 3 states away finishing my junior year of college when my dad called and told me to come home immediately. I drove 14 hours straight and walked into a house full of people who looked at me like I'd pulled the trigger myself. My mom wouldn't even look at me during the funeral. She stared straight ahead while my aunt whispered loud enough for me to hear that I should be ashamed for abandoning my baby brother when he needed me most. My dad pulled me aside after the service and said, "He called you 11 times the week before he died. You didn't answer once." I tried to explain that I'd been drowning in midterms and had texted Ethan that I'd call him on the weekend, but my dad just walked away. At the reception, my older sister Lauren told me I wasn't welcome at the house anymore. I moved back to campus and called home every week for a month. No one answered. I sent emails and texts apologizing for not being there. My messages went unanswered. I drove home for Thanksgiving and my mom had changed the locks. I knocked for 20 minutes before a neighbor told me my family had gone to my uncle's house for the holiday and specifically said I wasn't invited. I tried again at Christmas. My dad opened the door, looked at me with empty eyes and said, "You made your choice when you left. We don't have a son anymore." Then he closed the door. My grandparents sent me a letter saying I was selfish and ungrateful, that I'd destroyed the family by caring more about my education than my own brother. They said they never wanted to see me again. I stopped trying after that first year. I graduated college alone. No one from my family came. I got into medical school and sent the acceptance letter to my parents' address with a note saying I was doing this to help people the way I couldn't help Ethan. It came back marked "Return to sender." I moved to a different state for residency and built a life with people who didn't blame me for existing. I met my wife during my oncology fellowship. She knew about Ethan and never once made me feel like his death was my fault. We got married at a courthouse with her family as witnesses. I didn't bother inviting mine. When our daughter was born 3 years ago, I sent birth announcements to my parents and siblings. None of them responded. My daughter started asking why she didn't have grandparents like her friends, and I didn't know how to explain that her grandparents blamed me for their son's death and pretended I didn't exist. Last month, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was my mom, and her voice sounded exactly the same as it did 10 years ago. She didn't say hello or ask how I was. She just said, "Your brother Kyle has leukemia, acute myeloid. They did the family testing and none of us are a match. The doctors said we need to test you." I stood there in my kitchen holding the phone, and I couldn't feel my legs. She kept talking, saying they'd already set up an appointment for me to get tested, that Kyle was running out of time. I finally said, "You haven't spoken to me in a decade." She started crying and said, "I know, but this is different. This is life or death. You're his brother. Please." Then she said the thing that made my hands shake. "We can talk about everything else later. Right now, we just need you to save Kyle." I hung up without responding. My wife found me sitting on the floor 20 minutes later, and I told her everything. She held me while I cried for the first time in years. The next day, my phone exploded with messages. My dad, my sister, my aunts and uncles, even my grandparents who hadn't acknowledged my existence since Ethan's funeral, all of them begging me to get tested, to donate if I was a match, to save Kyle. My sister Lauren sent a long message about how we were still family no matter what happened in the past, how Kyle was innocent in all of this, how I needed to be the bigger person. My dad left a voicemail saying, "I know we haven't been fair to you, but Kyle is dying. You can hate us later. Right now, we need you to do the right thing." I got tested the next week. I was a perfect match. When the transplant coordinator called with the results, she said Kyle's odds would go from 30% to 85% with my bone marrow. She asked when I wanted to schedule the donation procedure. I called my mom back, and she answered on the first ring. She was already talking before I could say anything, thanking me and crying and saying they knew I'd come through for Kyle. I interrupted her and said 3 words. "He abandoned me." The line went silent. I kept talking. "Ethan left me a note, didn't he, before he died? And you hid it because it was easier to blame me than admit you missed the signs." My mom started hyperventilating, and I heard my dad shouting in the background, asking what was happening. I said, "I found it last year when Grandma died and I cleaned out her house." She kept it in her Bible. Ethan's suicide note where he begged you to tell me it wasn't my fault, that he loved me, that I should live my life and not feel guilty. You read that and still blamed me. You let me believe for 10 years that I killed my brother. My mom was sobbing now, trying to form words. I said, "Kyle can have my bone marrow, but you'll never see me again."